Welcome everyone. We're continuing, excuse me, we're continuing our discussion. And today we're going to read many things Prabhupada said about Yogamaya, and we're also going to read Krishna's explanation of why he left the rasa dance. The Gopis didn't understand. If there's time, we're going to read more about the relationship between the Gopis and their husbands. And we've discussed that a lot, but there's, probably not today though, but there's more summaries. And today's class is going to focus a lot on Krishna explaining that his leaving the Gopis was actually for everyone's best interest, and he actually never left them. But he gives the reasons, he pacifies them. So it is kata that's quite high, but we try to make it understandable in a way that it can practically benefit us, and that we understand it as it's meant to be understood, and that way get purified from it. So we will begin a little kirtan, and then we'll start. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Go Premanandi, Hare Hare Bol. Gauranga. Nityananda. I just have to set this up. Just give me a moment. It's kind of turning into a bit of a concert here. Anyway. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari. Swaranandana Brajajana Ranjana. Swaranandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Bana Chari. Tira Bana Chari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Jasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Shodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Shaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvise Sasunivari Paschatyadasatarine. So we have been talking a lot about the Gopis' relationship with their husbands. And we've also been talking about, I think we've been talking a little bit about Krishna's rasa lila and who was able to come and who wasn't able to come, and how those who couldn't come became purified. And as I mentioned earlier, we're probably today going to read a bit about Krishna's explanation as to why he left the gopis. And we're going to read something about different levels of bhakti comparison of married gopis and unmarried gopis. And those who were actually married to Krishna and those who weren't, but apparently married to others. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Shamini Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sindhivari Paschadya Satarine. Welcome to all of you. It is cold here in Alachua this morning. And be prepared to transcend your material conception of life with what we read today. In Goloka Vrindavan, there is an exchange of love known as parakiya rasa. It is something like the attraction of a married woman for a man other than her husband. This is, I think, from Krishna book. In the material world, this sort of relationship is most abominable because it is a perverted reflection of the parakiya rasa in the spiritual world. Now, this is actually, I think, from Chaitanya Charitamrita. It is a reflection of the parakiya rasa in the spiritual world, where it is the highest kind of loving affair. Such feelings between the devotee and the Lord are presented by the influence of Yogamaya. Yogamaya creates a situation in which the devotee is prepared to transgress all regulative principles simply to love Krishna. A devotee naturally does not like to transgress the laws of reverence for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but by the influence of Yogamaya, he is prepared to do anything to love the Supreme Lord better. So sometimes the gopis are given as examples of complete surrender. They gave up everything. Reputation, relation with relatives. They put their babies down. They're just examples that Krishna is calling. We have to put everything down when Krishna calls. Give up, not everything down, but we have to put down everything that's in the way of pure devotional service. So someone might say, but isn't having children, isn't that helpful? Yeah, it is. Until it isn't. So, of course, Prabhupada's not recommending that you put your babies out on the front doorstep and just get in your van and go out and distribute books. But it's a principle that the gopis would not allow anything to inhibit or get in the way of their relationship with Krishna. And the thing is that when you're on that level, it's not an intellectual process where you can think, should I, shouldn't I? Because the love is so intense. And the desire to be with Krishna is so strong that you wouldn't allow anything to get in the way, no matter what it is. So that's a principle. But, in practice, it's going to be different for us, obviously, right? I hope you don't all leave your kids today because of this class. Those under the spell of the material energy cannot at all appreciate the activities of Yogamaya. For a conditioned soul can hardly understand the pure reciprocation between the Lord and his devotee. But by executing devotional service under the regulative principles, one can become very highly elevated and then begin to appreciate the dealings of pure love under the management of Yogamaya. Yeah, because the point Prabhupada's making is that you can't look at Krishna Lila as if it was an ordinary Lila of this world, because that you won't understand it. You'll be bewildered by it, or you could offend Krishna. Why are you doing that? Why are you dancing with other men's wives? Why you're causing them to neglect their families? But Prabhupada's saying, by execution of devotional service, then you come to understand what love is. And then you understand why Krishna is doing everything. So these classes, I think, are helping us understand the nature of love. It's a deep subject. The Goswamis have written many books about it. There are many levels or stages of love that have been analyzed. And the more we understand what is love of Krishna, then the more we will understand what we used to think to be love is not really love. And what we used to think is, this is very elevated spiritual consciousness. Maybe we thought that before we were devotees. We come to understand that's not actually necessarily always correct, because now we're getting a clear or deeper understanding of what love is. In the spiritual loving sentiment induced by the Yogamaya potency, both Lord Sri Krishna and the damsels of Braja forget themselves in spiritual rapture. So Krishna also forgets himself. We should always remember, and I think there's a tendency to think, when we think of love of God, we always tend to see it from the Bhakta's perspective, maybe a little bit too much. At least I do, or I used to. And if you study love, you will see that whatever the Bhakta is experiencing, whether it's an anxiety to be with Krishna, or separation from Krishna, or losing themselves, or ecstasy, or whatever, Krishna also experiences the same thing, because love is not one-sided. And so if that's what love is, that's also what Krishna experiences, and that therefore it is said here, both Krishna and the gopis lost themselves in spiritual rapture. By the influence of such forgetfulness, the attractive beauty of the gopis plays a prominent part in the transcendental satisfaction of the Lord, who has nothing to do with mundane sex. So then you think, well, how would the beauty play a part in it? But the beauty is their love. It's not mundane beauty that Krishna is attracted to. Krishna and the gopis are spiritual, so they're not attracted by physical beauty. It's a different, their bodies are made of bliss. So if you talk about the gopis' beauty and the gopis making themselves beautiful and like that, it's all just transfer, just use the word love as a synonym for that. It will help you understand it. They made themselves more loving. By making themselves more beautiful, they did that to please Krishna, to attract him, to give him happiness. But the fact that they try to make themselves more beautiful is what attracts Krishna, not the beauty itself, from at least the way we would see it as physical beauty. The beauty of their heart, the beauty they manifest, that beauty is their devotion. Because spiritual love of Godhead is above everything mundane, the gopis superficially seem to transgress the codes of mundane morality. Mundane morality is morality. And if morality inhibits bhakti or gets in the way, then the devotee would give it up. As we're saying, in the ordinary course of life, we have to follow moral codes. But moral codes are a lower principle than pure bhakti, and sometimes moral codes conflict with pure bhakti. And therefore, sometimes the devotee has to choose pure bhakti over the moral codes. So again, we're not saying become immoral in the name of Krishna consciousness, but here, this example is used so we can understand that what the gopis were doing was not immoral, but it was the highest expression of love. So Prabhupada says, superficially seem to transgress the codes of mundane morality. At least those who don't understand would say this is immoral. Sometimes it's explained that when Krishna is dancing with the gopis, people criticize, okay, you're dancing with other men's wives. But it's explained that the gopis are expansions of his own body, of his own self. So one way you can look at it is that Krishna is just dancing with himself. Or as we explained before, another way you can look at it is that Krishna is the husband of every woman. So he's not dancing with other men's wives. These are his wives. So you can either say he's dancing with himself, his own energy, he's Atmarama. Why does he need to dance with others if he's self-satisfied? Because these are expansions of himself. So he's dancing with himself. Or he's dancing with other men's wives. No, every woman is his wife. So you're dancing with Krishna's wife instead of you thinking Krishna's dancing with your wife. That's how you should see it. Kind of funny, huh? No. Why is Krishna dancing with other men's wives? No, you're dancing with Krishna's wives. Because spiritual love of Godhead is above everything mundane, the gopis superficially seem to transgress the codes of mundane morality. This perpetually puzzles mundane moralists. Therefore, Yogamaya acts to cover the Lord and his pastimes from the eyes of mundaners, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7:25, where the Lord says that he reserves the right of not being exposed to everyone. So, people who are not qualified to see the Leela, Krishna doesn't show it to them because they're confidential. It's just like, no, you can't come in here. You're not qualified to understand this, so I'm just going to cover it. To you, it'll just seem mundane. You won't be able to understand what's actually going on. I don't want you to understand because you're not qualified to understand. So in that sense, Yogamaya acts to protect the Lord's pastimes. Still, so many people will interpret, but Krishna will, as we said, Krishna will show them what they want to be shown. Krishna will let them think the way they want to think, but you can't, without devotion, you're not going to be able to understand these pastimes, even if you read them. Krishna will cover them by his Yogamaya potency. You'll have no idea what's going on. Then you'll just get puzzled. He's dancing with other men's wives. He's God. What's going on here? You won't understand. And if you say, I don't understand, well, you've just revealed your lack of adhikari. And you have to work on yourself. Even if we say that, I don't understand how Krishna this and that, we have to learn. We have to become more purified. We have to study. That's what we're doing now. The acts of Yoga Maya make it possible for the Lord and the gopis in loving ecstasy. In loving ecstasy, read that again. The acts of Yoga Maya make it possible for the Lord and the gopis in loving ecstasy to sometimes meet and sometimes separate. These transcendental loving affairs of the Lord are unimaginable to empiricists involved in the impersonal feature of the absolute truth. Therefore, the Lord himself appears before the mundaners to bestow upon them the highest form of spiritual realization, and also to personally relish its essence. So Mahaprabhu is, inconceivably, he's allowing us to enter into these pastimes, which it's just like mind-boggling. The Lord is so merciful that he himself descends to take the fallen souls back home, back to Godhead, where the erotic principles of Godhead are eternally relished in their real form, distinct from the perverted sexual love so much adored and indulged in by the fallen souls in their diseased condition. The reason the Lord displays the rasa lila is essentially to induce all the fallen souls to give up their diseased morality and religiosity and to attract them to the kingdom of God to enjoy the reality. A person who actually understands what the rasa lila is will certainly hate to indulge in mundane sex life. For the realized soul, hearing the Lord's rasa lila through the proper channel will result in complete abstinence from material sexual pleasure. So, this is the point is that there couldn't be anything further than from mundane sexual pleasure than Krishna's relationship with the gopis. As we become purified and understand this love as it is, naturally the sexual desires diminish. at least within the mind and heart. If you're young, they may not diminish in the body. That's just unfortunate. But when you're in your procreating years, they kind of stay in the body a bit. But still, the mind has a huge effect on the physiology. So the sexual desires on the physical level. So this is the remedy, hearing about Krishna and the Gopis. Because it's so pure, and it's the highest expression of Krishna consciousness. If anything's going to purify this desire, it's going to be this, because this is as far away from it as possible, as you could possibly get. So here Prabhupada says, a person who actually understands what the rasa lila is will certainly hate to indulge in mundane sex life. For the realized soul, hearing the Lord's rasa lila through the proper channel will result in complete abstinence from material sexual pleasure for the realized soul. So that means if we realize these leelas, then yes, it will result. That will be the result. And of course, we have to understand the leelas in the proper way and not see them as something material or mundane. That will have the opposite effect. But one of the things we are supposed to get from these leelas is to understand that all enjoyment will come from relishing the enjoyment of Radha and Krishna, not trying to enjoy it for ourselves. But as we hear about them and we relish their activities, their enjoyment, we enjoy. To such an extent we enjoy that the desire for material enjoyment is, as Prabhupada says, we'll actually hate it. It will be repulsive to us, yes. And that will be a happy day when that happens, right? Okay. I'm going to see if you have any questions. So far, it looks like we're okay. I thought that might stimulate some questions, that last thing I said. Repulsive. I have that verse of Jamuna Acharya. He was a king, became a devotee, you know. Kings have a lot of facility to enjoy. So after he became a devotee, sometimes he would think what he used to do as a king. Sometimes we do that. We think, oh, before I was a devotee, I used to do this. That was horrible. I can't believe I did that. I wish I had never done that. So he was thinking like that. He was thinking of his past relationships with women, sexual union with women. And he was like, oh, this is like, I can't believe I did that. This is like, oh, this thought is just, it's horrible. Because he was relishing Krishna consciousness. I don't know if you ever had that experience, but if you do something or taste something or have something that is far, far superior to what you formerly had, sometimes you'll look back and say, I can't believe I used to do that. That was like, there was no pleasure in that. I thought there was pleasure because I didn't know what the reality was. You know, I don't know if you can relate to that, but sometimes you have something, it's not very good. You don't know it's good, and then you finally get something that's much, much better. It's produced actually the way it's supposed to be. Then you understand what you had was really bad, and you look back and say, I can't believe I actually liked that. That was 30 years ago, and you see a picture. That was the fashion, and you look at it and you laugh and go, I can't believe I like that. That's so ugly. So it's something like that. You're relishing Krishna consciousness on such a deep level that you look at the things you used to do and you think, I can't believe that I actually got pleasure from that. It's like, when I look at it now, it's just disgusting to me that I did that. That's what happens. That's the point. And that's, Prabhupada said, that's how you know you're advancing in Krishna consciousness. When you look back at your material activities and it's just like, ooh, I would never do that. So there's, of course, a lot of talk about the four regulative principles: controlling sex desire, regulating sex, and can you, is it wrong to have sex in marriage, and et cetera, et cetera. But the point is that when you come to a point where you can relish the leelas of Krishna and the Gopis, then that question no longer is a question. You just naturally don't want it. And so this is important for all of us, because we all have bodies and we're all conditioned by sexual desire. And if we can be absorbed in Krishna Leela, understand the reality of love between Radha and Krishna as best we can understand it, that will one of a combination of medicines, one powerful medicine. If someone has sexual addictions, they're going to need all kinds of medicine. But for the average person who's just averagely conditioned, this is the solution, as we've seen in our movement. So many men have come off the streets having had, or so many women as well, having had so many relationships with the opposite sex, and they're able to give it up. It's amazing. Indeed amazing. And all of us who have given it up are sometimes amazed that we gave it up, something we never thought we could do. I told you before, I believe, that the first time I went to a lecture by the devotees, after the lecture, someone asked a devotee, we were just in the elevator, someone asked the devotee, what are the principles? And he described the four principles. And I didn't really judge them. I kind of liked them. I just listened, and I thought, I could never do that. Not that I didn't want to do it. I just couldn't conceive of no intoxication, no illicit sex. I just, that was the culture. I had no experience beyond that. I didn't know it could even be possible. I mean, I was only 19. But that was just a gut initial reaction in my mind. I didn't tell him. I just thought, I could never do that. It was just an objective analysis, not a judgment of whether I wanted to do it or not. And what happened? That was in October. Sometime in October, and by January, I was living in the temple doing it. Param Dvishta Nivartate. Something better came along. You know how sometimes you think you're in love until you meet somebody and you fall in love with another person and you give up your old relationship? Not that you've done that, but it happens. Someone else comes along, sweeps you off your feet, and you're with this person you thought you loved, and you don't love them anymore because this other person has attracted you on a deeper level. Something like that. Not such a great example, but you can understand. So now we're going to read an interesting conversation. In this conversation, Krishna is the Gopis want to know, why did you leave us? It's like, we don't understand. We give everything for you. We come out in the dead of night, and then you leave us. Like, how do you think that makes us feel? Something like that. Like, or maybe not exactly like that, but don't you know how it makes us feel? And don't you love us? And how could you do that? So Krishna answers, my dear ladies, no one knows your sacrifice better than I, and no one appreciates your love more than I. I can never leave you any more than iron fillings can leave a magnet. Therefore, do not think I abandoned you. So now the gopis are bewildered because Krishna's saying, I could never leave you, but he did. So how can you say I can never leave you? So they say, if you didn't leave us, then how is it that we couldn't see you? It sure looked like you left us. So Krishna says, I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but these are answers to the question I think we all have. Why does Krishna leave the gopis? Why does he leave Vrindavan? We had discussed this in the last class, various reasons that Krishna's giving. Here's another reason. I vanished from your sight to observe the intensity of your love. As you well know, the ornaments of love and separation decorate the mood of love and union. So here's something that Prabhupada writes. This must be from the Krishna book. Quote, or Bhagavatam. No, this is from Krishna book. Do not think that I was away from you. I was near to you. I was simply seeing how you were anxious for me in my absence. So please, do not try to find fault with me. Srila Prabhupada adds that Krishna desired to see the ecstasy of their separation, and considering the unparalleled display of love by the gopis, he should be excused for hiding from their vision. So Krishna leaves the gopis, naturally their absorption in Krishna increases, and it gives Krishna great pleasure to experience the love of his devotees. So by leaving, but by being in close enough that he could see them, he was feeling even greater pleasure. So this is one reason. There are other reasons that he's going to give. It's interesting, but this is one. That it would help you increase your love and meditation, and it would help me because I want to see that love. And that's what I was doing when I left you. I was actually never far from you, and I was with you because I was seeing you and I was relishing that love. Somewhat incensed, the gopis replied, but why would you test us at the cost of such pain? So now Krishna gets emotional. He's choking up, and this is what he says. Even though I vanished from your sight, I was watching your display of loving separation. While doing so, I was overwhelmed. So now he's overwhelmed by their love, watching it from a distance. And the gopis started smiling and glancing at one another because they felt, wow, this is amazing. He really loves us. Krishna continues, when I saw you acting out my pastimes, you remember? When Krishna left, when Krishna left the rasa arena, you remember that? They began to play out leelas. They were just so absorbed in Krishna. So Krishna says, when I saw you acting out my pastimes as I played with my friends, in other words, they're acting out Krishna as a coward boy, herding my cows, my parents, as I played with my friends, herded my cows, served my parents, sported with you, killed many demons, I was stunned. Rooted to the spot, I could not move. Sakis, I've never witnessed such intense and pristine love as yours. So he's saying, I couldn't even come back. I was like stunned, like a pillar. I couldn't move. I was just overwhelmed by that love. I've never seen such intense love. So then Krishna paused, and he didn't know what else to say. And then he said, how could I abandon you? I could not even take my eyes off you. So you can imagine the gopis are being pacified now. And when you began to sing, he continued, the charming melody of your songs, the poetic expression in your words, the depth of emotion in your voices absorbed my very being. I was beside myself and lost in complete meditation upon you. I could not move. Wow. So this is beautiful because, as I was saying, usually the Shastra is showing more, I think it seems to me, showing more of the love that Krishna, that the gopis or the devotees have for Krishna, and not showing always as much this side of the equation, Krishna's feelings. And Krishna's saying here, just mesmerized by your love. And then the gopis keep asking a similar question. But we were about to die in separation. So why didn't you come and save us? You saw how much we were suffering in separation. Why didn't you appear? Krishna said, being fixed in my hiding place, I reciprocated your love from there. The gopis raised their eyes in disbelief. They're like, huh? And he's saying, no, it's true. Your bodily life heirs desired to leave, but only because I reciprocated your love did they consent to remain in your beautiful bodies. So they're saying, why didn't you come and save us? We were dying in separation. He said, I did, but you just didn't know it, because if I didn't, you would have died. I actually saved you. By my Shakti, I was reciprocating with your love, and that was keeping you alive. So then the gopis asked, well, where were you? Where were you looking at us? Krishna answered, I was behind every tree, every bush, every boulder. You know I'm all pervading. Dear ones, don't doubt me. So that's interesting. That's the instruction Krishna gave the gopis. You know, we're never separated. How can we be separated? I'm everywhere, Krishna says in the Gita. One who sees me everywhere and in everything, I'm never lost to him. Nor is he ever lost to me. Of course, the gopis, they don't like philosophy like that. Anyway, they trusted him because he's telling them that this is what he did. He's everywhere. He can see them from everywhere. Everywhere. In the universal form, the Paramatma. Everywhere is his hands. Everywhere is his feet. Everywhere are his eyes. Bhagavad Gita states that. Yani padam. Yani, I forget. Yani padam tat. Yeah, anyway. Everywhere. He's everywhere. Super soul's everywhere. They did not doubt him. They believed him, although they failed to understand how, being bound to their hearts by the ropes of their love, he managed to free himself in the first place. Like how he's describing how much he loves them, and they're thinking, well, if that's the case, how could you get away? But being simple village girls, they accepted his words. And so they were very happy. Now, the Shastra says Krishna was kind of prepared for this because he knew this is how they're feeling and they're going to ask this. So he, knowing how they're feeling, he goes on. He says, my dear Gopikas, you are my very life. Now please listen to what I have to say. When we wandered through the forest, enjoying ourselves with the blessings of blossoming flowers, humming bees, and the silver moon, you all thought yourself the most fortunate of girls. In that condition, you forgot yourself in ecstasy. So now, Krishna is going to explain what we have heard from Prabhupada in the Krishna book. And the gopis became a little proud, and they left their rasa dance. And of course, naturally, when you hear that, you think, wait a minute. the gopis can't become proud, at least materially, because they're Krishna's greatest devotees. So this section is interesting because it's going to explain what is meant by that pride, and then we see, well, actually, it was not. Sometimes that example is given. Krishna left the gopis because they were proud. We shouldn't become proud, and etc. But their pride was not the kind of pride we would have. So he's saying in that you thought yourselves most, when we were doing rasa dance, you thought yourselves most fortunate, and then you forgot yourselves in ecstasy. And so the gopis got embarrassed and they just looked at the ground. So Krishna says, I thought your pride would hinder our enjoyment in the rasa dance. For that reason, I disappeared. So-called pride. They were thinking, as explained here, we're the most fortunate women in the universe, which is true. Krishna's taking that as pride and saying, oh, that's why I left. Because, this isn't good for the relationship. You're becoming proud, so I left. How are we going to relish rasa if you're proud? So I had to leave. That was what he's telling them. So now it sounds like Krishna is telling the gopis, well, your love's not perfect because it's contaminated, or it's not complete, contaminated by pride. But that's not the real reason that they became proud. They actually didn't really become proud, and so he is going to explain it. So now he's explaining so they don't misunderstand. So he clarifies what he's saying. He's saying it's not that your love is deficient. I know this feeling that I'm the most fortunate woman, that was just one side of your love, the pride of your love. So he's saying actually it wasn't bad. The pride is just, no, he's saying it's not that you're bad, it's that this pride was an exhibition of your love. And so then they're thinking, okay, if that's the case, if it's an exhibition of our love, then how is it a defect that you need to correct? Good question. Then Krishna says, I didn't correct a defect. I was just invoking another aspect of your love. And then the gopis look at one another and they're like, I'm not sure where this is going. Like, where's he? What's his point here? So then Krishna continues. He said, look, it's like this. I wanted to perform the rasa dance. And if we're going to do the rasa dance in the best way, there's got to be one mood. We're all united in one mood. And that's what would make the dance successful. So rasa dance means everyone in one mood. So you all came from the forest, you came from your homes, you came from the forest, and you all had your individual moods. So your mood was just you and me and our love, that's it. So that's fine, that mood is perfect. But it didn't work for the overall, mass consciousness of the rasa dance. It didn't leave room for another way of thinking that could unite us. And the gopis said, well, why couldn't you just unite us all by just telling us that you want to dance with all of us and how you want this to be done? And so Krishna said, you had this love which was so individual, and I didn't want to break it. And if I did, it would created a conflict, and that would have been an impediment, and that would have obstructed our dance at that point. So rather than confront you, I just disappeared. And then you all shared a common loss, and you all became united in an instant. And then my purpose was fulfilled. This is the insider's secret of the Rasa Lila. But I think what's most important amongst everything here, what was most important is what we keep seeing happening as we're reading this, is that everything Krishna's doing is just to increase love. I mean, we've said that so many times. The reason we keep saying it is because we keep seeing it in this pastime. In everything we're reading the last few months, we keep seeing. This is just how Krishna's psychology works. If there's an opportunity to increase love, he does it. And we're seeing a clear example here. Okay. I'm just periodically going back. All right. We're going to keep reading. So now the gopis understand, but they're thinking, but is that original love like not proper, imperfect, deficient? So they ask, is our love deficient and in need of repair? Or as you have said, is it perfect? So they're like confused because he's not saying there was anything wrong with it, but he was just saying it wasn't working in the rasa dance. So they're a little confused. So Krishna says, it is perfect. It doesn't need anything to be complete. Okay, so that makes the gopis feel good. So now they say, there's some philosophy coming in here. If you desire to increase the devotion of ajata premi bhaktas, ajata means like the new gopis, their love is not complete. Or if you desire to increase the love of the jata premi bhaktis, that means the one who have love, we have no objection. An ajanta prema bhakti is a devotee in whom love has not yet taken birth. And ajata prema bhakti is one whose love has appeared. So they're saying, if someone doesn't have the love or the love has just appeared and you want to deal with them in this way, that makes sense. But to deal with us the same way, then you're kind of like treating us like ordinary devotees. And this makes us feel like your statements that our love is perfect, etc., are not consistent, hypocritical. Interesting discussion, isn't it? This is what's going on up there. When you get there, you'll find out. Sri Krishna considered his situation. He had left the gopis only momentarily, and even then they were neither out of his sight nor out of his heart. He had never seen such ecstatic love as displayed by the gopis at that moment. His body thrilled with rapture merely at its thought. So like Krishna was like really relishing watching the gopis. You could say feeling the gopis, feeling separation. And so now the question comes up. The gopis are having these intense feelings of love. So the gopis are saying, we're already perfect in our love. So why are you like stirring it up? That you do for those who don't have love of God, or just on the cusp of getting it, or those who just got it, who can go further. And you're telling us our love is not deficient, it's perfect. So Krishna has to respond to this. And Krishna is seeing this as an opportunity to instruct all of us. So sometimes it's said that you teach, the devotee will teach, Krishna will use a devotee because he wants to make a point, so he'll teach the world through the actions of a devotee. So here we'll read. He had taught others through the example of the gopis. In the process, he had wounded their pride, hurt their feelings, and treated them as if they were lesser bhaktas. If they felt they were wronged, he would have to admit his mistake. After all, he was a puppet dangling on the strings of their love. So let's see what happens. The gopis' faces looked like lotuses, golden lotuses, within the background of the gently flowing Jamuna. And Sri Krishna's eyes were like the bumblebees, anxiously drinking in the nectar of their beauty. Without reservation or hesitation, he said, "Dear Sakhis, I erred means I made a mistake. Treating you like ordinary devotees, please do not feel any ill will towards me. Be gracious and forgive me. You are my dearly beloveds, and I am also dear to you. You know the saying, one's dearest companions do not accept the faults of their beloved." So now Krishna is admitting he made a mistake. First he tells them nothing's wrong. Their love is the highest. And now he's saying, you're right, I treated you like ordinary devotees. I shouldn't have treated you that way. Wow. After he gave all the reasons why his actions were just to increase the love, still he's saying, I shouldn't have done it. So this is, of course, making them feel even more affection. There are surely none like you, nor will there ever be. Of what use is increasing that which is already unlimited? I acted to show other devotees the depths of your love and how I respond to that love. In doing so, I have caused you pain. Please forgive me for hurting you by being inconsiderate of your feelings. Wow. Even God apologizes. So here he's saying, this was done to show the glory of pure devotee by showing the glory of a pure devotee by showing the glory of your pure devotion. And please forgive me. I just wanted to demonstrate the depth of your love. And then Krishna says, this verse, I don't know if Krishna's saying this in this context, but the verse comes, Naparyeham. You may have heard this verse, Niravadya Samucham. This is from Bhagavatam 10:32, 22. This is to the gopis. I am not able to repay my debt for your spotless service, even within a lifetime of Brahma. Your connection with me is beyond reproach. You have worshipped me, cutting off all domestic ties, which are difficult to break. Therefore, please let your own glorious deeds be your compensation. In other words, there's no way I can repay you. And this is the fact that you have this love for me that has to be the compensation. Hearing these compelling words, all of Vrindavan stopped. The mountains, rivers, forests, and trees, the deer, peacocks, parrots, and bees. Those things which moved and those which were still, the wind, the sky, the moon, the stars, and, of course, the sweet-faced gopis, headed by Sri Radha, all stood still. Never had anyone or anything heard such words flow from Sri Krishna's lotus mouth. Taken aback, they all cried, Hare Krishna. I can never repay you. Your love. He's saying your love for me is far greater than my love for you. That's interesting, isn't it? Here's the Supreme Personality of Godhead saying, I cannot love you to the degree that you love me. That's amazing. Isn't it amazing? Are you amazed? Have you all fainted? Is there anybody there still watching? By looking at the comments, I can see that Nadia is the only one who hasn't fainted. And the newcomers, they haven't fainted yet. But everyone else is like, there's no comments. They're all fainted. I have this feeling no one wants to make any comments because they want me to keep reading, which is fine. We have more. Okay, so we're going to continue reading if anyone's still conscious. Or you'll have the recording when you come back to consciousness. So now we're going to go back. We're not actually going back. We're going forward because we haven't read this, but we're going back to a discussion we had previously to those gopis who are known as Shruti Chari. These were their personified Vedas that desire to enter into Krishna Lila as gopis. So there's some more discussion about this, and there's more discussion about the position of the different gopis and also their husbands. So that's coming up now. And what about the last category of Shruti Chari Gopis, those who were unable to leave their homes upon hearing the sound of his flute, because they were still influenced by the adverse opinion of society. Their love was affected. Thus, they were not qualified to meet him. Who else but he came to them within their hearts, embraced them, and bestowed the happiness of his touch? Who else but he inspired them to bear the fire of separation? Who else but he would greet them on the appropriate night, when, after having been purified through ordeal, fully spiritualized, they gained Yoga Maya's consent to meet him? In other words, they couldn't meet him because they weren't pure, but from within he helped purify them because that was their desire. And we've spoken a lot about how Krishna is always fulfilling one's desires. So here we're seeing an example of that although they weren't qualified, so Krishna would now work on them to become qualified because that was their desire. They were so frustrated they couldn't go to the rasa dance, and now Krishna's helping them become qualified. It was Sri Krishna alone who appeared in the hearts of these gopis when they meditated upon him. You know, they couldn't go, so they're thinking of him. So now he's in their hearts. In that condition, he embraced them and inspired them to tolerate the cruelty of their family members and the pain of separation, lest they leave their bodies. By his touch and the fire of his separation, they became purified of family attachment and dove into the ocean of unconditional love. When Yogamaya noted their pure, loving disposition, she immediately made arrangements for these gopis to meet Krishna on his nightly rendezvous with the gopis. In other words, now that they were purified by Krishna from within the heart, immediately Yogamaya is there and saying, okay, tomorrow night you now can go and run the rasa dance, you're qualified. So a question comes up, which it seems that Krishna is not aware of the sacrifice these gopis made. But he was, because the answer is, it was Krishna who made all the arrangements for these gopis to eventually meet him. And when the next night came and they were qualified to go, then by his arrangements, the husbands thought the gopis were there doing their duties. And their husbands felt no enmity towards them. That was all Krishna's arrangement, so they could go. So again, if someone wants Krishna, he'll make that arrangement. That's the point. Now, we read a little bit about this, and we're reading it again. Stated differently. For the gopis with infants, Krishna assured further immunity from their husbands. By making them appear like haunted beings, he gave them relief from breastfeeding. By urging their families to shun them, he freed them of all domestic responsibilities. And finally, it was he, and only he, who enticed them to enter the circle of his eternal pastimes. Is there a question that he misunderstood the sacrifice of all classes of gopis? No, there's no question. So, even when it seems like, Krishna, why did you do this? We sacrificed. There should never be a doubt that he's not acting out of love in the best interest of the gopis. That's the point. And there should be no doubt that yeah, I assume everyone was just enjoying the reading and thought, well, if you ask a question, I'm going to stop reading. That's what I was assuming, yeah. So the point is, if there's ever a doubt that Krishna wasn't reciprocating, then you should have no doubt. All along he was reciprocating. It may not seem that way, but this was to demonstrate, no, it actually was. And you know, sometimes also we want something, we're praying for something, and it seems like Krishna's not reciprocating, but maybe we're like these Ajata Premi gopis. The love has not manifested yet. Ajata means unborn. And maybe we're not qualified. And Krishna is doing things in our life now to make us more qualified, so those desires that we have, he can fulfill, because we'll be qualified for them. So that kind of faith we should have. If Krishna's not fulfilling his spiritual ambition, we should think, I just need to become more qualified. And it's not that Krishna doesn't want to fulfill that desire. He just wants to make sure we're qualified. So, we're going to continue reading about these Rishi-chari gopis. But there's a statement before that. The many types of gopis in Braja are manifestations of Sri Krishna's desire for variety in his pastimes. There's like, I think, 320 different kinds of gopis. From a relative point of view, some gopis may appear inferior, superior, more affectionate, or less so. However, they are all part of his absolute plan for a complete experience and should be all seen as perfect and equally important in serving the Lord's desire. So even so-called lower, but fulfills, they fulfill an aspect of Krishna's desire. So they're all of equal importance in that sense. According to the Brihad Vamana Purana, the personified Vedas desired to worship Krishna in the mood of the gopis and pray to the Lord for such a benediction. Learned scholars refer to them as Shruti Chari Gopis. By Sri Krishna's blessing, they took birth in Braj. By the association of the Nitya Siddha Gopis, they developed Purvarag, mature love for Sri Krishna. and achieved his companionship on the night of the Sharadiya Rasa Yatra. So these quotes I'm reading now came from another source, but it's possible these quotes could have shown up in two different books, the exact same quotes, because it's by the same author, Shivaram Swami. So if this sounds familiar, it might be, because we've discussed this, and it may be that the same quotes appeared in both books. The Rishi-chari Gopis, Rishi, Chari Gopis, these are different from the Shruti-chari Gopis, Rishi, were previously sages worshipping their deity Gopal in Dandakaranya forest. Yeah, they weren't I thought I had mentioned they were devotees of Lord Ram. I'm not sure that's true, but they did meet him. Padma Purana records the history of how they met Lord Ram and expressed their desire to serve him as paramours. By the blessings of the Lord, they were raised to the mature stage of spontaneous devotion, even though traces of material contamination still remained in their hearts. So, some slight contamination, but to the stage above. They then appeared in the wombs of gopis to take birth as cowherd girls in Braj. Srila Prabhupada indicates that the majority of the gopis who questioned Krishna were from the category of Rishi-charis. Rishi-charis means any rishi or devotee from the past who has now taken birth to perfect themselves. He writes, this is what Prabhupada says, quote, "The gopis who were gathered there had almost all been followers of the Vedas. In their previous births, during Lord Ramchandra's advent, they had been Vedic scholars who desired the association of Lord Ramchandra and conjugal love." So they were Ram Bhaktas. Ramchandra had given them the benediction that they would be present for the advent of Lord Krishna and that he would fulfill their desires. During Krishna's advent, the Vedic scholars took birth in the shape of gopis in Vrindavan as young gopis. They got the association of Krishna in fulfillment of their previous birth's desire. So, this, I just want to get some clarity here. This statement here. Srila Prabhupada indicates that the majority of the gopis who questioned Krishna were from the category of Rishi-charis. In other words, they were at this point in the Rasa Leela. Krishna leaves them in this questioning that we read. Most of them were in the stage of new gopis being purified. Interesting, right? The Rishi-chari gopis are divided according to their qualifications for Krishna's love. Because their qualifications differed, divine fate made various arrangements by which their hearts could become pure, their love mature, and their meetings with Krishna a reality. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions 3 different classifications of Rishi-chari gopis. This is interesting. So what's being said here is that all these gopis had different qualifications. Because they were different, Krishna made different arrangements for them and how they'd become purified. Isn't that nice? I think so. So now we're going to read about the 3 classifications of these gopis. Hare Krishna. Yes. In the first classification are the Rishi Chari Gopis, whose qualifications for Krishna's love were ripe. By contact with the Nitya Siddha Gopis, upon reaching puberty, they acquired loving attraction for Krishna, Purvarag, although they had not yet met him. For more information on Purvarag, you can go to Chaitanya Charitamrita 23, 63, 64. By the arrangement of Yogamaya, these gopis were able to overcome the obstacles placed before them and participate in the rasa dance on the night of Sharda Purnima. So these were already more evolved. In Krishna's company, their residual attachment was consumed, and they rose to advanced stages of prema, like sneha, mana, and so on. So what's being described here? There was some slight contamination, but their love had ripened, so they could enter without any obstacle. Or whatever obstacles were there, they could overcome. They weren't prevented from going to the rasa dance. And in that rasa dance, whatever contamination was left, it was removed. And they could rise in prema. There are different levels of prema. 3 levels are described here, or 2 levels are described here. Sneha, mana. And you have so many levels that you can elevate yourself to. If you're in Madhurya Ras, you can elevate yourself to higher levels than if you're in other rasas. So there are various stages you can get to that in other rasas they don't get to. In the second category are the Rishi Chari Gopis, who did not have the good fortune to associate with Krishna's Nitya Siddha associates. These girls were unable to develop love for Krishna, and in the company of their husbands, they became pregnant and gave birth. In time, under the guidance of eternal associates, these gopis also developed intense attachment to Hari and then Purvarag. When the night of the rasa dance drew nigh and the sound of the flute entered every home in Braja, the force of these gopis' love was tested by their aggressive husbands, who, sticks in hand, obstructed their path to the Jamuna. So, said the first gopis that we just had described, they had the association of the Nitya Siddha gopis. These gopis didn't. So, when Krishna called them for the rasa dance, their husbands were like, no, you're not going. Some of these gopis were able to overcome the impediments posed by their relatives and were able to leave their homes. Those who did entered the pastimes of rasa, although they came later than the first wave of gopis. These gopis became fortunate through complete purification and the gift of pure prema. So they overcame the obstacles. They came a little late. Other gopis, still burdened by impurity, were confined to their homes through the entire night of Sharat Purnima. To their unhappiness, they could not meet with Krishna. By separation from their beloved, they entered devotional trance and met Krishna within their hearts. When he embraced them within, these gopis also acquired the good fortune of love and achieved qualification for his physical companionship. Yogamaya arranged these gopis to successfully quit their homes on a subsequent night and fulfill the burning desire of their hearts. So we've read about those gopis, but we didn't realize there were 3 classes. Now we know the 3 classes. And only one class was unable to make it to the rasa dance on the first night. There are still other sadhakas who will also enter into Krishna's pastimes at a future date. According to their purity and attachment, they will also enact the drama ordained by fate. These sadhana siddha gopis will somehow acquire purvarag. Purvarag means you become attached to Krishna just by hearing about him before you meet him. And by that attachment, gain Krishna's consortship. In Krishna's pristine company, they will become completely pure-hearted, and the advanced stages of prema, culminating with Mahabhav, will appear in their hearts. So, one time Prabhupada said, everyone's going back to Godhead, it's just a question of when. So this is describing what different gopis had to go through. And some is faster and some is slower. So, but eventually they live happily ever after, which is the main thing. It has a happy ending, despite the difficulties. Okay. So we have 8 minutes. We have a little more to read. We have page and a half, maybe. No, we only have one more thing to read. You know, we normally don't read this much. So when I prepare, if I get 5 pages of things to read, a lot of times when we're discussing this topic, we only read 1 or 2 paragraphs. So I put in 5 pages, I think, oh, well, this is plenty. So I studied this morning and put this in, and then I started working on other things. And now I'm seeing I thought, oh, this will last us a few days, 5 pages. We're finishing 5 pages today. Next, the category of gopis according to their characteristics are described. This study is but a summary of the main divisions given by Rupa Goswami and Ujjvala Nilamani. For a more detailed understanding of the subject, devotees may refer to that book. There are 360 different types of heroines in Braja. Although their temperament, love, affiliation, nature, and mood vary, they are all very much beloved to Sri Krishna. The varieties of their loving moods enhance the unlimited diversity of his pastimes and abode. The more, the merrier. Parakya bhava is the emotional condition in which samartha rati appears. What is so special about it? Prabhupada says, quote, expert analysts have decided that the transcendental ecstasy of Parakya mellow is better because it is more enthusiastic. Everyone's more enthusiastic for the girl next door than they are for their own wife, right? Well, hopefully not everyone, but some. Well, it depends what the girl next door is like. But you get the idea. Krishna is more enthusiastic with other men's wives than with his own. This phase of conjugal love is found in those who have surrendered to the Lord in intense love. Knowing well that such illicit love with a paramour is not morally approved in society. That's what makes it so good. The risks involved in such love of Godhead make this emotion superior to the relationship in which such risk is not involved. So that just goes against the grain of social norms, which makes it more special. That's from the Adi Leela, chapter 4, verse 50 purport. And the last thing we're going to read. The gopis who are married to others must transgress scriptural norms and sacrifice their reputations. To meet Krishna, they must take great risks and enjoy no solace other than Krishna's satisfaction. This unpredictable and highly vulnerable nature of Paraki above obliged the gopis to have no support in loving Krishna other than love itself. So again, it's kind of how we started. The gopis sacrifice everything, so they break all moral norms. And that's what makes this relationship called Paraki above so special. Relationship with the wife of another man. Abominable in the material world, the highest thing in the spiritual world. Okay. So that's it. We read everything. We did our 5 pages. Hare Krishna. So I will see if you have any questions or comments. If not, we will end. Looks like you're all happy, ecstatic, getting a little glimpse of the spiritual world, entering more deeply. I hope you can appreciate how beneficial it is to enter more deeply into these Leelas. Hare Krishna. So I think we'll end here. We'll do something revolutionary and actually end on time. Or no, end before time. This could be a first ever. Except I think one day I was really tired. We ended early. Hare Krishna to all of you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.